newsroom and powered by demerarawaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. First, the lead stories. The People's National Congress Reform wants the government to abandon plans to build a natural gas pipeline and instead ship the fuel. A Bishop's High School teacher has been freed of 6 charges. Regionally, Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. Barbados is digitizing its national identification cards. And for the international news, we'll bring to you the latest from the BBC World Service. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now the news in detail. President Irfan Ali, on the occasion of Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary, is calling on Guyanese to make sweeping changes to their personal attitudes.
Attitudes set in misrepresentation, political mischief, and destruction will not take us forward. The rapid advancement of Guyana requires us to change the way we think, act, and behave. The scale of development dictates that our thought process must now address more complex and dynamic issues.
He says his government welcomes constructive criticism, healthy debates, exchanging of views, and critical examinations of policies, initiatives, programs, and plans to advance the One Guyana initiative.
These discussions must not be based on a selfish agenda, biasness, perception, propaganda, and feelings. Instead, they must be firmly rooted in facts and a pragmatic understanding of what is required in this rapidly changing Guyana.
President Irfan Ali speaking at a flag-raising ceremony to usher in Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary. The event was held in the forecourt of the Parliament building last night. Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, Aubrey Norton, is promising to remove income tax. He reiterated this promise during a message to mark Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary.
The PNCR wishes to make it clear that as your government is waiting, as part of the coalition, we will remove the burden of personal income tax from our people. We see this as an enduring obligation to you, given the current favorable economic circumstances from oil and gas.
The PNCR leader is also urging an end to racial discrimination against foreign and local investors, and corruption, including alleged bribe-taking by top government officials.
It concerns the PNCR that Ghana is getting so much income, but our people are getting less. And at the same time, the high cost of living is eating out the little that we get. On this, the 52nd anniversary of our republic, we call on the Ali regime to stop serving their elite, their family, and their friends, and ensure that our people benefit from our national patrimony. Our windfall from oil and gas should not be used to make the rich richer, but rather to eradicate poverty and give our people the reason to celebrate.
Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Aubrey Norton. The People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, on Tuesday argued against the government building a more than $1 billion natural gas pipeline. The more than 200-kilometer pipeline, which will be financed by ExxonMobil from Coast Oil, will take natural gas from the Liza well to a gas-powered electricity plant to be built by the government at Wales' West Bank, Demerara. PNCR Central Executive Member, retired Rear Admiral Gary Best, says broadly that shipping the gas will be better.
In particular, the use of ISO containers to ferry liquefied natural gas to shore is a much less expensive and more environmentally friendly transportation method. We are advised that LNG ISO tank containers are seen in the industry as the easiest and most flexible means of conveyance to transport gases. Apart from the massive cost savings relative to gas pipelines, the LNG tank container option would allow the country to export excess gas to several overseas markets. Clearly, this is a better option since such export is not possible in the pipeline project.
He declines to provide technical details to justify his party's preference for shipping. Instead, he wants the bipartisan Parliamentary Committee on Natural Resources to discuss the various choices.
I don't think this is the forum to provide technical details. What I can say to you that we do have our experts and we're willing to sit and discuss those details with the government. Secondly, there are a number of institutions and organizations that also have information in relation to not only oil and gas and natural resource, but many issues that afflict the nation. So it is important for the PPP to utilize the democratic mechanisms within the Constitution, within the Parliament. There's a Parliamentary Sectoral Committee on the Natural Resource. Therefore, we call on the government to use that committee, bring the public and other experts to give evidence and information concerning the oil and gas, natural resource, and also a pipeline.
Guyana, Suriname, and Brazil have been in talks about the construction of a natural gas pipeline to send gas to a huge electricity generation plant in Brazil. Known as the Arco Nord project, it has been studied by the Inter-American Development Bank. Thousands more water users across Guyana's coast will have to pay rates by meter. The Guyana Water Incorporated, GWI, says it will be installing 20,000 meters during this year, with the aim of increasing metering to 85%. The utility company says this is the continuation of a robust metering program which saw over 15,000 meters being installed in 2021. That include the replacement of close to 5,000 non-functional or faulty meters. Based on 2019 data, only 53% of consumers along the coast have water meters. Among the areas to be metered during this year in Region 2 are Anna Regina, Cottonfield, Lima, Mainstay, Reliance, and Walton Hall. In Region 3, the metering schedule includes Anna Catharina, Den Amstel, Cornelia Ida, Good Fortune, Hodroin. On the east bank of Demerara, Eccles, Farm, Great Diamond, and Little Diamond, and on the east coast of Demerara, Better Hope, Industry, Lusignan, Ogle, and Happy Acres. The Georgetown metering schedule includes Kitty, Lamaha Gardens, Queenstown, South Rheinveld Gardens, and Bellier Gardens. In Region 6, metering will be done in areas which include Williamsburg, Rose Hall Town, Nig, and Port Morant, while in Region 10, metering will be carried out in Amelius Ward, Linden, among other areas. Metered GWI customers are billed based on the amount of water consumed, and this allows them to manage their consumption to avoid a higher reading. Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony says mental pressures associated with the COVID-19 pandemic appear to be easing. He made the observation during his latest COVID-19 update.
I think at the beginning, when people were locked away because of the curfew, and there was a lot of restrictions of movement, I think at that point in time, people found it more challenging. Now that the society is more open up, I don't think people are so confined, and some of the challenges and anxieties that people might have had in the early part of the pandemic, that has eased somewhat.
The health minister says that a fair number of persons are being affected by the long-term effects of COVID infection.
So we've seen a subset of patients who would have fatigue, who would have things like brain fog. They don't remember in the midst of a conversation, they forget things. And that's partly due to inflammation of the brain. So this is something that we have to pay attention to, and that's why the unit that we have set up to deal with long COVID would be assessing these types of patients.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. Bishop's High School teacher Cohen Jackson was Tuesday found not guilty of one count of sexual activity with a child under 18 years old by abusing a position of trust. Attorney at law Nigel Hughes said the jury was unable to arrive at a verdict on the remaining 3 counts on the same charge. Mr. Hughes also says that in the remaining 3 counts, the verdict was 9 not guilty. Mr. Jackson was represented by Savannah Barnwell, Jerome Khan, and Nigel Hughes. Back in 2018, the Magistrates Court had found that there had been sufficient evidence for Mr. Jackson to be tried by a judge and jury. He had been accused of committing the offense between December 2010 and May 2011 at Durban Street Lodge on a female who is now 26 years old. The man who was arrested allegedly attempting to leave Guyana for the United States with cocaine in fried rice has pleaded not guilty. The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit says that 28-year-old Esmond Jermaine Anderson was remanded to prison until March 8. Kanu says he was held with 6 pounds of cocaine in frozen fried rice minutes before he was due to leave on a JetBlue flight for New York last Friday. His lawyer told Magistrate Judy Latchman that someone at the airport put the cocaine in his unlocked suitcase. Mr. Anderson was employed in Guyana by a leading oil sector support company, and he earned more than $200,000 per month as a warehouse specialist. Head of Kanu, James Singh, says the arrest of Anderson with drugs is a lesson to young people not to be tempted to get rich quickly. And now in regional news. Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. Reuters news agency says the remarks appeared aimed at raising American alarm as world powers try to conclude a nuclear deal with Tehran. Venezuela said in 2012 that Iran was helping it build drones for self-defense. The 2 countries, both OPEC members and long at loggerheads with Washington, also cooperate on oil exports. Briefing U.S. Jewish leaders in Jerusalem, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz showed photographs of what he described as an Iranian Mojajir UAV, unnamed aerial vehicle in Venezuela. Iran denies supplying military drones to any of its allies and has denied seeking nuclear arms or supporting terrorism. Venezuela's information ministry did not immediately reply to an email seeking comment on Gantz's remarks. Israel supported the 2018 withdrawal of the United States from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, and with Washington now taking part in negotiations to revive the pact, has urged caution. Barbados is rolling out new digital identification cards. The announcement comes as Barbados's licensing authority is to undergo urgent reform, and a private company is to be hired to deal with the backlog of driver's licenses. The Barbados government says that the new digital cards will also replace driver licenses. Details from Barbados Today.
Barbadians will soon have their new digital national Trident identification cards. Word of this from Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, Davidson Ishmael, who on Monday announced that the new cards will be rolled out in the coming months. The new digital ID cards will replace the current laminated identification cards and also driver's licenses. In addition, persons can also opt to have their fingerprints and medical information embedded in the new cards.
This new Trident ID card will be launched during this first quarter of 2022. And I can assure the House through you, Mr. Speaker, that this project is at an extremely advanced stage of its development. And we are confident that, barring no unforeseen circumstances, that we shall be well able to deliver this exciting new Trident ID card in the coming months. Most of the technical work, Mr. Speaker, has been completed, and my technical team is currently in the phase of beta testing all of the technical aspects of the solution to ensure that we have compliance with international data security standards. And Mr. Speaker, may I assure this House and the people of Barbados by extension and through you that we are checking every detail connected with this card.
Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, Davidson Ishmael, ending that report from Barbados Today. Trinidad and Tobago is depending on natural gas to rebuild its economy as well as other economies. We get more from TTT News Online.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says natural gas will provide the energy needed to assist in rebuilding economies as the world emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister's statement came during his address at the 6th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum in Doha on Tuesday. Dr. Rowley said as a country impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, Trinidad and Tobago can identify with the theme for this year's summit, championing natural gas post-COVID-19 recovery and sustainable development.
Pre-COVID-19, the domestic energy sector, based on the government strategies, was enjoying a major upturn. The pandemic curtailed this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects.
Prime Minister Rowley said the pandemic affected this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects. He added, however, that recovery is on track.
In the medium to long term, several gas projects are in the appraisal and sanctioning phases. These include deep water projects with estimated gas reserves of 6.6 trillion cubic feet, and the Manatee cross-border field, which adjoins the Venezuelan Lauren field.
The Prime Minister and a delegation which included Energy Minister Stuart Young left for Qatar last Friday for the 6th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. The summit began on February 20 and ended Tuesday.
That report from TTT News Online. And now in Antigua. The St. John's Magistrates Court has granted bail to a woman believed to have made COVID-19 vaccination cards for her own financial benefit. Antigua Observer reports that Jamisha Millwood was charged with 21 counts of forgery for allegedly forging 21 of the vaccination cards last year. She made her first appearance before Chief Magistrate Joanne Walsh represented by attorney Lawrence Daniels, and was granted bail in the sum of $1,850 with $925 cash component. She also has to report to a police station 3 days each week, provide 2 local sureties, and surrender all of her travel documents. The nurse allegedly charged over $370 per card when she allegedly committed the offense at the Multipurpose Cultural Center on November 13, 2021. The 29-year-old mother of 2 was said to be an employee of the Sir Leicester Bird Medical Center and was a volunteer at vaccination stations. The Health Minister, Sir Malwyn Joseph, disclosed in November last year that the woman had been relieved of her duties until the matter has been resolved. The defendant is set to make her second appearance for her committal hearing on March 17th. And now for the international news, here's the latest bulletin coming from the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Neil Nunes with the BBC News. Ukraine has urged its citizens to leave Russia immediately in the face of what it called an intensification of aggression by Moscow. It's also advising Ukrainians not to visit Russia. The foreign ministry in Kiev warned it could become much more difficult to ensure proper protection of its citizens there. Sergei Gyashka from BBC Russian is in Moscow.
There are lots of people with Ukrainian passports here in Russia. They've been working here, studying here, and it could turn into another major crisis because it would be difficult for them to leave the country immediately and travel back home to Ukraine. Even since 2014, the relationship between the countries have soured. Still, lots of Ukrainians are living in Russia.
Earlier, Ukraine's foreign minister welcomed international sanctions against Russia as a good first step in response to President Putin's decision to recognize the independence of the breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Countries including Japan, Australia, and the United States have announced measures against Moscow. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison accused the Russians of behaving like thugs and bullies. Our correspondent in Brussels, Jessica Parker, has more details of the EU's planned measures.
The broad shape of it is targeting, for example, the 351 members of the Duma who voted for the recognition. It looks like they're going to be subject to an EU asset freeze and travel ban, banning trade as well with the 2 breakaway regions, limiting the Russian state's access to the European Union's capital and financial markets.
The White House says tentative plans for a summit between President Biden and Vladimir Putin have been scrapped. Mr. Putin has said he remains open to diplomacy, but said he would continue to boost the power of the Russian military. He made the comments to mark a public holiday called Defender of the Fatherland Day.
Our country is always open for direct and honest dialogue, for the search of diplomatic solutions to the most complex problems. But I repeat, the interests of Russia, the security of our citizens, are non-negotiable for us.
In other news, the United Nations has warned that the number of extreme wildfires is likely to increase by 50% by the end of the century. A report by the UN Environment Programme says the rise is being driven by global warming and changes in land use. It says areas that are already prone to wildfires are seeing them burn for longer and at higher temperatures. Even remote northern areas such as the Arctic and regions of thawing permafrost are no longer immune. The new study calls for a radical and urgent reallocation of financial resources to preventing wildfires. BBC News. Rio Tinto, the world's second-largest mining company, has posted record earnings of more than $20 billion after a year of soaring commodity prices and strong demand in China. The firm apologized last year for blowing up a sacred Aboriginal site in Australia. Company executives resigned because of the scandal, but received large payouts. Fewer babies were born in South Korea last year than since records began. The fertility rate, the average number of children a woman bears in her lifetime, stood at 0.81, thought to be the lowest in the world. The South Korean authorities are trying to encourage births through cash handouts, in some cases worth more than $1,500. New figures show the maternal mortality rate in the United States, already the worst among industrialized countries, has risen to its highest level in 50 years. The figures have been published by the National Center for Health Statistics. Here's Mark Duff.
Across the United States, 861 women died of maternal causes in 2020. That same year, the latest for which figures are available, the US maternal death rate was more than 3 times higher than in neighbouring Canada. There simply is no positive spin to put on the data. Today's figures also reveal a widening racial disparity, with 55.3 deaths per 100,000 live births among black women, compared to 19.1 for white women.
Japan has demanded an apology from China after a member of its diplomatic staff in Beijing was briefly taken into custody earlier this week. The Foreign Ministry in Tokyo said the move clearly violated the Vienna Convention, which says diplomats can't be detained. It's not clear why the Japanese national was apprehended. BBC World News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. The People's National Congress Reform wants the government to abandon plans to build a natural gas pipeline and instead ship the fuel. A Bishop's High School teacher has been freed of sex charges. Regionally, Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. Barbados is digitizing its national identification cards. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.